Daith da, Ewi Nagan. Welcome to podcast number 130. Well, last weekend was a weekend of two halves. I worked pretty much all day Saturday, and then Sunday I had the day off, pretty much. We had the boys in the morning, our grandsons, and then in the afternoon, you may well have seen the photos, I went down to the Dooms there at Perranporth for the start of Perrantide, the week celebrating the arrival in Cornwall of St Piran, the patron saint of Cornwall and tin miners. And what they do with Perranporth, they always have the parade across the sand dunes to St Piran's Cross and the old oratory and the Lost Chapel on the nearest Sunday to St Piran's Day, which is the 5th of March. And so it happened that it was Sunday. And the weather was handsome. It really was beautiful. So we had a brilliant day there, really. Lots of lovely photographs there, lots of kilts. I wore my hunting tartan kilt down. And a good time was had by us all. I must admit, I ain't the best of... I'm getting there with me Cornish language, but I'm okay on the single words, but 'tis conversations and sentences I do struggle a bit with. But I tell you what, 'twas brilliant then. You're walking along the dunes and there's people walking behind you and they're actually talking fluently in Cornish. And like you pick up the odd words and that. But it was brilliant. It really was. And then Monday we was back to work. And amongst the funerals we had dear Ina's funeral. I know her from Nance days, really, when my grandparents used to live there in Nance. And we had her funeral. And then in the afternoon, we had a memorial service, which was a little different because we'd had the cremation a couple of weeks before. So this was a memorial service, but 'twas in the old library there in Bodmin. And they had the reading room there. And we had a lovely little service. We took our music system along, for the music and everything. And it's the first time I've been in there. First time we've ever had a little memorial service there. And of course, they got the cafe there in the same building. So it was really good. And Julie, she did work in there. I think she helped in there. So it was very appropriate that we went there for her memorial service. Amongst the funerals we had on Wednesday was dear Debbie's funeral. And Debbie, we had the service there in Padstow Church. And she's been a lovely friend to us over many years. Such a generous, kind person. When we used to do our fundraising, we used to have coffee mornings when we started doing our marathons, first of all, raising money. And dear of her, she would give prizes. She would buy raffle tickets. She'd support us on the day. Fantastic woman. She really was. And she ain't much older than me, really. And it was sad that she passed away, but we had a wonderful service down there. And I have actually put on my Facebook page today, actually, I'll talk about it directly, that we're now raising funds again for charity. And I must admit, I will think of Debbie, when I'm doing those things, because she was a wonderful support to us. And then amongst the funerals today, we had dear Joy's funeral, someone I've known all my life. And that was at St Bray in the church and then in the churchyard afterwards. And then this afternoon we had Johnny's funeral. And I've put photos on and videos as well on our RJ Bray Facebook page because Johnny had the Harley Davidson motorbike hearse. And it was looking proper, it really was. And the family, they put out a little request if there was any bikers that was free that would like to come on, to join us on Johnny's last journey. The family came in to Wadebridge to leave from our place. And then we stopped in the car park of the Camels Rugby Club. And there must have been, I think there's 20 bikes, that was there. And so I led the way there on my bike. And then all the bikers followed me. And then Johnny was there in the motorcycle hearse with the family behind. And we got a couple of videos. We got one as we were leaving, going out of Eglisale, And then we got another one as we were arriving at Glyn Valley. But that was a lovely sight, and it stayed dry, which was a blessing. And I'm sure Johnny would have loved it. I'm sure he would have. So anyway, like I did mention just now, I did start up a Just Given page today for our little charity event for this year. And what's happening is next weekend, not this one coming, but next weekend, I'll be running the Bath Half. And then in May, it was funny really, because Beth said to me, end of last year, she said, we ought to do a bike ride. We haven't done many bike rides lately. I said, yeah, fine, okay. She said, I'll book one up. Well, I should have really checked what she was booking up, because the next thing, there's emails coming through. You've been entered. Now, I think you pronounced this right. A Tape Caledonia, I think it is, which is a cycling event. You do it in one day up in the Highlands of Scotland. And basically, it's 85 miles you've got to do in a set time in the islands. And I don't think that sounds very flat. You get the feeling there's going to be quite a few steep climbs there. So I don't say it's going to be enjoyable. It's going to be testing. So I thought what I would do, I would just see if anybody wanted to, donate for the charity, for Alzheimer's Society, because there's a lot of you would know Father had a very long battle with Alzheimer's. I thought I'd just do a Just Given page, and I thought I'd set up just £500 as a target. Well, within just over an hour, I think we've nearly reached 500 already. People were so generous. I can't believe it. It's fantastic. So the running's been a lot of our training. I haven't started cycling yet. I can't remember last time I got on a push bike. But we open, if the weather's nice, we might do a cycle this weekend. But if you want to, if you go on either on my Facebook page or just go on Just Given and look for David Bray, there's a photo of me there in me Weybridge Running Club vest kind of thing, which I feel a bit of a fraud, because even though I got the vest, I've never run with them yet. It's just the time really. And like, we now go out first thing in the morning, and of course they run evening time, but there we are. But yeah, if you look out for that, and if you'd like to donate just to help, because they're getting closer every day really with halting and finding a cure for Alzheimer's and all other kinds of dementia as well. But anything would be really appreciated as we try to fight this disease. Right, well now we move over to part 3 of Phil Tremain. Now, part 1 and 2 was a few weeks ago. And it was funny, I think I said at the time, as I was driving away from St. Columb, I thought to myself, hang on, there's a few bits there we never really covered. And like, Phil would mention something, and then we went off on a tangent. So we've been talking, and I did whip out there last night, and I did a recording, and we got some lovely more stories from Phil. And I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I know we had brilliant comments for the first 2 episodes. So I'll hand over to Phil now. And I called this podcast, as you might have seen, Unfinished Business. So I'll hand you over, and then I'll speak to you directly. So here it is. Get on, Phil. I'll be knacking.
Splan, Dave, splan.
Proper.
Diff da.
Brilliant. Unfinished business. That's what I'm calling this episode. So I think, first of all, if you want to talk about some of the shops that you've thought about since we met last time and go from there.
Yeah, I will, certainly. I'll try not to repeat any. And there's quite a few people who've said to me, you forgot this one, you forgot that one.
Yeah.
There's a few that I don't remember, so I'm only going to talk about the ones I remember. But starting up the street again, up the top of the town, as it were, there was Betty Styles, which was a ladies, quite a posh ladies' dress shop up in Fair Street. And then coming on down the street, what I should have remembered was Bernie Hooper. He had a shoe repair shop.
Right.
When you actually repaired shoes. And Bernie was a lovely chap. He sang in the church choir. I sort of learned to sing tenor standing next to Bernie. And Bernie played in a dance band back, probably before the Second World War and possibly during, I'm not sure. I can't remember the name of the band. but he played the saxophone and the banjo.
Right.
And his saxophone was held together with elastic bands because he played in a few concerts and things afterwards. And he could make the thing talk. He could really, really played it really well.
Yeah.
And after he finished, my dad actually bought the saxophone from him and had it repaired so that it didn't need the elastic bands anymore. And it's actually at the moment with my daughter in Brighton, where she plays the sax. And so I think Bernie would love to think that his sax was still out gigging.
Definitely.
Because that's what it's meant to be for.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, and so, that's Bernie Hooper. And then we move on down the street. There was Rumble's shoes and leather goods shop, and they had a factory behind. So it's a bit like Clark's Inn Street in Somerset on a smaller scale, perhaps.
Yes.
That was run by Aubrey Rumble.
Oh, I can remember that because whenever we needed new leather straps to carry the coffins, we always used to go there.
That's right. Yeah, I have still got a leather case when I started secondary school, Newquay Grammar School, with my initials on that came from there. And I've still got it and use it occasionally, but it's been repaired since.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another Weybridge connection, because just a bit further down the street from that was Chapman's the Jewellers. And of course, that was a sort of outpost of Ron and Roy Chapman.
That's right.
In Weybridge. They had a shop there as well, didn't they? Yes, because, and I might have mentioned it before, but we're related because my paternal grandmother was a Chapman.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Then there was Pollard, Mrs. Pollard. She had a shoe shop.
Right.
And further on again, there was an electrical goods shop run by Harry Brooks. And then underneath the town hall is quite smart now. There's a library downstairs and the town council meet upstairs. But a chap called Bert Tippett had a bicycle repair shop, push bike repair shop in the base of the town hall. And then upstairs, there was the magistrate's court.
All right.
So that's a reflection on perhaps how important St. Columb was back in the day and how that sort of thing, And then moving on, Barnicot's Bakery. There was a Barnicot's baker's shop and sort of confectionery and that sort of thing.
Would that have been Keith Barnicot?
Yes, it was. Yeah, because there's Keith and Malcolm.
Malcolm was his son.
And Malcolm's the one that's got the place in Weybridge now.
That's right.
That was. I'm pretty sure that was Keith Barnicot, and that was run by a lady called Jo Pearson. She ran that shop, and then afterwards she sort of set up on her own, just a bit further down in Bank Street. She had her own shop, and then also there in Market Square, opposite the War Memorial, Tom and Jenny Williams had a newsagent shop along from there, and there were a barber, Mr. Cook the barber, and we had another barber just a bit further up the street, Rosevere. So we had two barbers.
Yeah.
And across from there, Whitford Solicitors in Bank House, big sort of fairly posh house, again opposite the War Memorial. Then going on down the street, I've already mentioned one or two other things, but right down at Bridge, there was an egg packing station called Snowpack.
Right.
Down in Parsons Yard at Bridge. And of course, later on, I think there was also an egg factory up in Barn Lane. And sort of thinking now, leaving the main street, we had a couple of, at least 2-3 garages. I mentioned, I think, Monty Powell's last time, but Henry Chapman, he had a car repair shop at Town Trees in Higher East Street. And right up the top of the town, Enterprise Garage, Jack Teagle, in Trekennan Road. That was quite a big outfit that's been run until recently by his son Philip. Yeah. And Phil's now retired and the business is closed at the moment.
Yeah.
And sort of thinking about other things, there were a couple of plumbers, at least two. Cess Bray, Plum Bray, who lived in East Street. And a chap called Dick Bonney, who actually, I think, again, I mentioned that my grandmother lived next door to the two district nurses. Well, the other side of that was Dick Bonney, who was a plumber. Right. And he was also an extremely good seascape painter. Oh, right. And he had I think he retired out to Trearnan. Right. And did some seascapes. Mm-hmm. But he was a very, very accomplished painter. Now, I was thinking a little bit about the pubs.
Yeah.
I think I've already mentioned the Silver Bull, which was formerly the Railway and Commercial, and that was run, in my memory, by Pat Morris. Pat Morris was there for years. And then coming down the street, there was the Red Lion.
Yeah.
Now, that was run at one time by a chap called Grinley, and someone was telling me, chatting about my previous talk, that at one time, to go into the lounge bar, you could only go into the lounge bar if you had a tie on.
Get away.
It was also run by Joe Jeffrey. I can certainly remember that. And someone was telling me that they worked there as a barmaid, and she'd asked about the dress code, and he said, as short as you like and as low as you dare. And then in the clubs in the square, conservative and liberal again, I think, sorry, I keep saying this, I mentioned last time.
Yes.
But there was also the Barley Sheaf, which was run by Dot Roberts.
Right.
And then moving on down the street, the Ring of Bells, that had 2 or 3 different landlords. I think Dave Delmonico had an off license there, and I'm not sure if he didn't run the pub at some point as well.
I see.
And right a bit further down, there was the New Inn, which is later known as the Coaching Inn, and that's what it's known as now.
Yes.
And that was run by a dear little lady called Bessie Lady, who would put the beer into a jug and pour the beer out of the jug into the glasses. And I played darts there when we had a dart league in St. Columb, and when time needed to be called, Bessie would say, "Come along, children, drink your milk." That was the signal to move out. And right down at Bridge, the old rectory was at one time a country club. Right. And my 21st birthday took place there 50 years ago last week.
God.
So, yeah, that was quite a long time ago. So I'm sure there are others that I've forgotten, and 1 or 2 people have said things to me. I think, well, I don't remember that. But
no, that's a lot of pubs for a smallish town,
yeah,
really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Right on. And I know we touched briefly on the fire brigade, but we didn't really go into it too much depth.
We moved on to other things.
Yeah, so if you'd like to talk a bit about that, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, well, I was in the fire brigade, I think, from 1976 till 1984. And I started out because I worked in my dad's shop in the town, and I could provide day cover, which they were short of. So I was chatted to about that, and myself and Des Osborne, we both started on the same day,
right?
And we had consecutive brigade numbers, and it was the summer of 1976, which of course was very, very dry and very, very hot. And I spent the first month beating out gorse and ended up with blisters all over my hands through throwing the beater around. And of course, my locker got the sign blister written on the front. Typical. But the station officer then was Aubrey Rumble. I mentioned Rumble's Leather Shop.
Oh, yes.
Aubrey ran that, and he was station officer. Sub officer was Mark Sims.
Right.
And he was an agricultural engineer. And so he had workshops at Trekennan, but, turned in when that was necessary. And then there was Leadham Fireman Lawrence Knight. Right. Lawrence worked shifts up at the Clay. And there were a number of retained firemen who worked shifts at the Clay. And certainly, I think St. Dennis Station was almost entirely made up of people from Clay. And others I remember were Dick Rundle. Dick worked out at the camp. And I think he'd also worked on farms. And Jeff Coles. Jeff Coles worked in Searles, the ironmongers, right next door to where the fire station then was. So Jeff could turn in pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Anthony Gregory, he was a motor mechanic up at the Enterprise Garage, so he wasn't too far away. Monty Mewton, he was another clay worker, shift worker.
Right.
Mike Cully was a carpenter, so he was self-employed. And I think when I started, I don't remember, there might have been 1 or 2 others, but after that, Roy Rogers came along and joined, Dave Usack, who was chatting to yesterday at the Hurlin.
Yeah.
And another friend of mine, Richard Bobeck, who sadly took his own life after a particularly gruesome RTA. And there's a memorial to him up at the fire station, which was opened last year sometime. Which was unveiled last year sometime.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a very sad occasion.
Yeah.
But it's always good to go back when they have open days. And in fact, our grandson was down last week, and he likes fire engines, and so one of the present firemen sort of met us there and let him have a climb on the fire engine. And he was telling me some of the technology they've got now. Well, I mean, compared to what it was like when in my day, which is 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So if you had a call, because I remember when I was young, a siren would go off in town. So would that be how you had the call?
We had a siren and then bells in our houses. So you had house bells. So the siren had a timer, so it didn't go off in the middle of the night.
I see.
And then we had house bells in our houses.
Yeah.
And that's got superseded with bleepers eventually. But I don't think that was in my time. I really don't remember.
No.
But yeah, it was a good experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
Oh, very good. That's good. And also, I know you was going to mention about the carnival here in St. Columb.
Yeah, well, St. Columb Carnival always been very popular in the town, and certainly at one time they reckoned it was one of the biggest ones in Cornwall. And we've had in the past the Royal Marines band here to lead the carnival, and the band of the Light Infantry, who I think march at 120 paces to the minute or something like that. So they go up and down in front of everyone else. But it was the carnival started, I think, back in the 1930s, before the NHS. It was to raise money for the district nurses, because in the collection of old carnival cups, there's one cup donated by the St. Columb Nursing Association, another cup donated by the Indian Queens Nursing Association, because Indian Queens was at that time a part of St. Columb Parish.
Yeah.
So, as I understand it, that was the original intention, was to raise money to pay for the salaries of the district nurses.
Yeah.
But I was quite involved with the carnival at the time when I was working with my dad in the town. I was the secretary for a few years and was very much involved in doing that. Yeah. But it's a good occasion.
And it's still going strong now.
And it's still going strong, thanks to the people that keep it going and give up their time to do it. All these things require people to volunteer and come forward to do it, don't they?
Did the carnival get affected much, like with health and safety? I think as Wadebridge, I know we lost a lot of the big floats and that with insurance and health and safety and that. I don't know.
We still have some big floats. I think there is a need for them all to have insurance, and they got perhaps to produce. I'd say I've not been involved with it for years, so I don't know exactly. But they do still. We still certainly do have floats.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, lovely. That's good. And we're recording this on the Wednesday, which means yesterday was hurling.
Yeah. Yesterday, it's Ash Wednesday today, and yesterday was Shrove Tuesday, and of course we in St. Columb went hurling. Yeah. And we had a great hurl. It was terrific. I think probably the best weather for hurling that anyone can remember. Yeah. It was really lovely and dry, and so we had a really good hurl, good crowd of people. Yeah. We always like the bull to stay in the town for an hour. Yeah. Obviously, if someone ran off with it after 5 minutes, that would be a bit of a miserable thing to do. Yeah. But the bull stayed in the town for near enough an hour, and it was eventually run by Sean Johns, who that was his 12th win of the hurling. Yeah. I think 10 for the town and 2 for the country. All right. And
does that depend where he lives then?
Yeah, that's right.
Right, I see.
And he took the ball down the valley from St. Columb towards St. Morgan Parish and across the parish boundary at Nance. Right. And so it was a really good occasion. Yeah. Is there a limit to how many people can take part, or no? No counting of numbers or matching of men. I think someone said about it once. Right. And in fact, you only know who's on which side because people know. People that are hurling know. Who people are and who they hurl for or where they live. But so is there's no uniform or anything like that. No.
Is there teamwork involved, or is it an individual?
It's an individual thing, but I think it's very often that there's a certain amount of, working with your mates or your family to, we'll plan to do this, and if you can get the ball down to me, then I'll do such and such. But of course, it doesn't always work out like that.
No, exactly. No. And 12 is a lot. Has anyone ever got more than 12?
There is more than that, and I ought to know the number, but I don't.
No.
I think Michael Weldon was a countryman, and I think I'm thinking 15, but I might be wrong, and people will be shouting at shouting at their computers when I say that. Say, no, it was something else.
No, very good. Yeah. No, I say the weather was fantastic.
It's lovely. Been lovely these last few days.
Yeah.
Smashing.
Brilliant. Lovely. Brilliant. Well, thank you for that. That's brilliant. That's filled in a lot of the gaps, I think, that from the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
So I really appreciate that.
Right, and thank you.
I'm heading home for tea now, and are you heading bell ringing?
Bell ringing practice later on.
Yes.
Bell ringing practice.
Yeah, yes. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Phil. That was proper. So once again, if you want to say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah, goodbye. Do Guinness.
Proper job. Thank you, Matt. Lovely.
Cheers.
Well, once again, Phil, thank you very much for that. I think you can safely say we filled in a lot of the gaps. So for my Cornish word of the week, I thought I did it last year, but I'll do it again this year just to reinforce it for Happy St. Piran's Day, which is Go Peran Lowen. Go Peran Lowen. And then for me Cornish dialect of the week, I think this will be another of John Ben Alex. John gave me some booties in time, and this one is liquor. So if something's really big, it's a liquor. But what you would say was, God, he was a real great liquor. Or you can do a little bit more dialect and say, God, he was a girt liquor. He was a girt liquor. So that's what it is. Liquor, really big. Right, well, I'll leave you now. And I'll speak to you again next week. I hope you have a good week. Wish you well. Do Guinness. Carna Bisfican.